the rise and fall of the Voter Rights Act. With the new election around the corner, voter suppression is a concern for all of us. It threatens democracy and the future of our nation, but the truth is, this isn't a new issue. From the beginning of our Constitution, we established a system where states could determine their own voter rights laws. And in the Jim Crow South, this meant compounding with racially motivated laws, from literacy tests to property requirements to the grandfather clause. And this system wasn't really questioned until the 60s and the Civil Rights Movement. In the early 60s, a lot of southern states doubled down on their racially motivated laws. Remember that movie, Selma? Well, yeah, that march was a direct response to these injustices. And it was the bravery of those men and women which led to not only the voter tax being eradicated and deemed unconstitutional, but also led to the rise of the Voter Rights Act, which was signed by Lyndon B. Johnson.
I speak tonight for the dignity of man and the destiny of democracy. What happened in Selma is part of a far larger movement which reaches into every section of America. This bill will strike down restrictions to voting in all elections.
Wow, it all worked out. That was a quicker video than I expected. 2013, Shelby versus Holder. The U.S. Supreme Court gutted the Voter Rights Act.
The decision invalidating a section of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 deeply divided the justices, but it rested on a simple premise. As Chief Justice John Roberts said, nearly 50 years later, things have changed dramatically. At issue was a provision in the act that singled out states with a history of discrimination in voting, mostly in the South, and required them to get pre-clearance, approval from the federal government before changing voting procedures.
This meant that states were no longer required to submit their voting requirements to the Justice Department for approval. On August 11th of that year, North Carolina passed a voter ID law, which seemed to target African American citizens with, quote, surgical precision. After gaining traction from civil rights activists, the Supreme Court shut down this law, but other southern states followed suit and passed their own discriminatory laws.
17 states will have new voting regulations in place for the presidential election this November. 12 states will join the ranks of those requiring voters to show a government-issued photo ID, including Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Texas.
This means that the election in 2016 was the first one in 50 years where we didn't have the protection of the Voter Rights Act. It was also the 50th anniversary of the act being signed. That is disgustingly poetic. So what does voter suppression look like today? Well, how about Wisconsin passing strict voter ID laws which discouraged over 300,000 American citizens from voting? In Milwaukee alone, where over 70% of Wisconsin's African American population resides, we saw a 13% decrease in this voter population. And that's just one city. Oh, and Wisconsin is a swing state, so let's do some math. A 13% decrease is 41,000 votes. Trump took Wisconsin with 22,748 votes. Don't even get me started on the Georgia voter purge of 2016. Over 560,000 voter registrations were canceled and deemed ineligible, only to find out a year later, when 87,000 voters decided to re-register, that they were eligible the entire time. So where are we now? In the time of a major pandemic where vote by mail could not only be the safest option, but the option that helps eliminate voter suppression in this upcoming election, we're being told this.
Where's the evidence of it?
I think there's a lot of evidence, but we'll provide you with some. Votes by mail, where thousands of votes are gathered, and I'm not going to say which party does it, but thousands of votes are gathered and they come in and they're dumped in a location, and then all of a sudden you lose elections that you think you're going to win. I won't stand for it.
According to Heritage's own research, in the past 20 years, 0.00006% of all mail-in ballots were fraudulent. But okay, whatever you say. Since the death of Congressman John Lewis, Democrats have reignited the push for the Voting Rights Advancement Act, drawing support from VP candidate Kamala Harris and former President Barack Obama, who said,
"If politicians want to honor John, and I'm so grateful for the legacy and work of all the congressional leaders who are here, but there's a better way than a statement calling him a hero. Right. You want to honor John? Let's honor him by revitalizing the law that he was willing to die for."
So what are you willing to do? Are you willing to fight for your own democracy? Are you?